the Evolution Security Podcast. All right, everybody. This is the Evolution Security Podcast. We are excited for another awesome round with John Valentine. Straight off of, I believe it was about, as we record this, it was a week and a half ago that the inaugural Combatives Summit kicked off. And hey, John, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. Finally settled in back home, recovered, well rested. So yeah, it's looking back, it's just like it was so fast, but it was a long weekend at the same time. So I'm happy everything went well.
Well, for me, everyone I've talked to, including lots of the instructors there and people that were not there, that really wanted to be, but lots of feedback, people just nothing but positive, and not just positive, but better than everybody expected. So you're a legend this week, my man. And and I am really ticked off I didn't get to go. I had a conversation with Chuck Haggard over some text, and he said, "Man, I heard that was great. I wish I could have gone too." So I will be there next time around, and hopefully we can talk my wife into it. I think I can, because she can handle it for sure, and it'd be a lot of fun to get to hang out with everybody. All of us get some learn on. But Eric, bro, since you were there, why don't you bring John in here and let's take this apart and see, let our audience know how awesome it was.
Excellent. Well, the intent of this is to do an after-action review, or AAR as we call it in the Army, of the Combatives Summit. And John, first off, man, number one, congratulations on doing such a wonderful job of hosting, organizing, pulling together all the teams that supported this effort. I mean, I told you, I think it was maybe the last day, or maybe, leading sometime in the middle of the last day, I said, John, I thought this would be epic, but it was 10 times better. And I mean that absolutely. So thank you very much, and congratulations, buddy.
No, man, thank you. And it's always, whenever you get positive feedback from an informed consumer, guys who've been around, like, that's just, it's 10 times worth, what it would be from someone. Not that it's not valuable, any feedback, but just getting that kind of feedback from somebody who's very informed, very involved, guy who trains all the time. So yeah, man, that means a lot to me. But the other thing is, like, it's a group effort. I mean, all those guys, all those instructors, they're either mentors or friends of mine, or people I've looked up to and respect for many, many years, for as long as I've known what combatives is. So yeah, it's not my success alone, for sure. Everything is really just, a lot of goodwill went into this. A lot of people, they put forward, just because they believed in the mission of making the greater combatives community better, making the community better, getting good information to the end user. So as far as, like, it's not about me or any particular instructor. It's like all of this was successful because of the community, and really, the quality of the student that attended. Everybody there was just awesome. We had professionals at all levels, and every skill, every craft, professional gunmen to professional fighters, high level martial artists. It was awesome. It was awesome. Everybody there it was a collective effort. It was a collective success because of the quality and the efforts of everybody in the collective. So yeah, it's definitely not something I can honestly take all the credit for. I can't. It's really not my thing. So, but yeah, I appreciate it either way though.
Well, before we go much deeper, for someone like me, I can kind of give a definition, but John, go ahead for listeners that they've heard the word combatives or the concept of combatives, but can you give a pretty good explanation, definition of what that means to people that may not fully understand?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask Matt Larson, he would say it's America's martial art. And what is unique about American culture is that firearms is something that we've done since the create or something that we've had access to and fought with since the founding of this nation. Excuse me. And as handguns have become more prevalent, gun ownership has become more prevalent. There's been a need for an understanding of what an entangled fight looks like while armed, and also how to deal with a fight where you can't shoot the person. Kind of addressing things from a holistic approach, so to speak, and you know, a lot of people don't want this to be true, but it is that a lot of gunfights started off as fist fights. So if we ask ourselves what combatives addresses a fight in a holistic, takes a holistic approach to fighting, whether you're there's always some circumstance, some kind of social dynamic where there's a person being pursued and a person that doesn't want to be pursued, and there is some attempt to gain compliance with you know, verbally, and that ends in some kind of disagreement, and one grabs the other, and then they start fighting. And in the real world, it's not a sanitized environment like a mat room. So anything as simple as, you know, the ground is an omnipresent impact weapon. So real fights always there's an element of grappling, and the range that where you can grab somebody, you can definitely hit them. So strikes are involved. And because there's no such thing as a sanitized environment for fighting, weapons are always in play, even improvised ones such as slamming somebody, or even you find a shoe or something. So that's the way I look at combatives, a holistic approach to fighting.
Well, and John, I want to really drive home an important point. And, you know, I think you'll agree with this. You mentioned that, you know, most or a lot of gunfights start as fist fights. And, you know, we know in this community that in many cases, a justified gun fight or justified self-defense shooting can in many cases happen because of a lack of empty hands and combative skills. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Cliff Byerly he's full of a lot of great phrases, and he always says that, like bad tactics leads to good shootings. And meaning that, like, you know, a lot of times you put yourself at such a deficit where your only option is to go kinetic and get something lethal, because if you don't get this person off you or stop them and caving your head in, you're gonna end up dead. So, but a lot of times that can also be mitigated because these people that, as violent as they may be, as pugnacious as they are, most people have a universal fight plan, which is pummel you with their fists until you can no longer fight back. And in that, you know, grappling, it's like, if there is in terms of tactics, right, rock paper, and we want to frame it as rock paper scissors, right? That's rock, and then grappling is paper. It's just it's a very simple plan to
well said, man.
just by smothering them, and just applying soul crushing pressure, where you could take a lot of fight out of somebody just by immobilizing them and making them feel helpless. So I would say that yeah, I totally agree with that. It's yeah, you have a lot of guys going into situations and their only reference and frame or point of reference for fighting is the grade school fight they got into where it was
Mhm.
just a wild slugfest. And so we're trying to establish that you need more, and also that you don't need as much as you think. You don't have to be a professional fighter. You don't have to make it to where you're training 5-6 times a day, or excuse me, or 5-6 times a week. You can have a very simple approach. Like I got to ask, hey, what do you think a beginner should do? Somebody should do. And look, truthfully, I don't recommend people start with martial arts generally. I think you should start by learning the law, understanding what is appropriate use of force, and some trauma medicine, and do a novice linear progression by starting strength.
Yep.
If you can do that, you know what you're doing, and at least if you have some excess hypertrophy, at least you'll kind of be deselected. You at least, because it's not like you're going to learn how to fight today. So at least most of the problems you're going to deal with, the top 10 causes of mortality are still health related. So like if you don't want to have all the technique in the world or learn all the cool gunfighting tricks, but then you look like you're going to lose a fight to the flight of stairs. So
Yep.
why not get strong and put yourself in a position where you can be trained without being hurt, because that's when it's going to be a detriment to your technique if you lose time off the mat. And you're going to the number one predictor of injury is weakness. So
Yep. Yeah, and it is one of those things about dealing with what to do. Most people feel fairly comfortable with, I say fairly, most people, that's probably not, but a lot of people, going to the gym sounds like a reasonable thing, although we would like people to do it more. Yeah, that, versus going to a jujitsu gym. That's a real good point, John. And I was gonna drive home your point is that our good friend and mentor Larry Lindemann, I love his phrase, you can't shoot a heart attack in the face.
yep.
And absolutely holds true. And I want to also tell you, this is my thought on it. And I totally, I love your humility about it. And yes, you absolutely had a team of individuals around you helping you with this process. And of course, without the world class, and I'm not going to mince words, the cream of the crop combatives instructors in the world were there. And so what I'm deeming this, and this is what I started telling everybody else, is that this is the TACCON of combatives. That's what it was, man. And
Those are big shoes to fill. Big shoes
um,
to fill. But
but I'm telling you, I've only went to TACCON once, but I absolutely had that thought multiple
yeah,
times.
I appreciate that.
Just some quick admin stuff. Now, October 28th, I'll be teaching our Evolution Security Defensive Pistol 1 class here in the Tulsa area. Go ahead and go to the show notes where we have the Eventbrite link for that class and come and train with us. It's going to be a blast, a great concealed carry focused class. And we want to implore you as listeners to go out to iTunes and rate and review our show. And then, of course, share the show to your friends and tell them they can listen to it anywhere there are podcasts. You can get our show. So we really appreciate the help in getting the show out there.
So real quick for the audience members, I'm just gonna, and John, if for some reason I forgot, and I know one person I got to add too, because there was a couple of change outs of folks, but I think for the most part, I'll just go ahead and name everybody that was there as presenters and instructors. So we had Craig Douglas of ShivWorks. We had Matt Larson of the United States Military Academy and the director of Combatives. a brilliant mind. Shouldn't we call him Dr. Larson possibly?
Not yet. He's working on it.
Oh, my bad. I thought maybe he did have his PhD, but my bad. So we also had Cecil Birch of Immediate Action Combatives, super, super good friend and mentor of ours. We had Cole Miller of Soul Force Combatives, former UFC fighter. I was in his Walls and Weapons class, excellent class. Of course, our buddy and coach Cliff Byerly of Hill Country Combatives. We had Ben Aubin of Redbeard Combatives. We had John Hoptman from Filster. We had, of course, you yourself, John Valentine of Deeds of Arms.
John actually didn't make it.
Well, I remember being in a John Valentine class. It was a very productive educational class.
John Houtman didn't make it, but
my bad. Okay,
yeah, so Filster's still sponsored though.
Okay, so interestingly enough, of course, the only reason I didn't know that is because I assumed I just missed it because I wasn't in his class. Okay, so thanks for that correction. I thought you were joking with me about yours. So, and then we had Aaron Giannetti of Knife Control Concepts. Man, phenomenal class as well. Dave Boone Benton of Threat Management Solutions. Benghazi of Benghazi Unfortunate fame. I would think he would agree with that. Guy Schnitzler of Palisade Training Group. Nick Delgadillo of Starting Strength. Good buddy. Fletch Fuller of Ready Up Tactical. Devin Crinklaw of In Extremis Tactical Group. Chet Palumbo of the Combative Lawyer. Sam Ferguson of Gallo Combatives, awesome guy. And Jerry Wetzel of Red Zone Threat Management. So pardon me. I just wrote a note here. And we also had a guest speaker of Chris LeBlanc, a excellent, very, very impactful friend of mine. And do you have anybody else that I forgot that I was not tracking?
And you forgot the OG himself, Kelly McCann.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
The original Combatives guy.
Yes, that is right. He was there. I was going from the list I had, but that's right. Kelly McCann was there. He is the OG. And by the way, interestingly enough, as I was driving to Florida, that was one of the podcasts I listened to was you interviewing Kelly. It was a phenomenal. Yeah. Kelly does not mince words whatsoever. I think he said he only had about 10 or more years left in this world. He doesn't give a shit. I would hope that he lives longer than that. I mean, I know he's getting up there, but maybe
he's a stud, man. And he's 65, but he's still like full contact sparring with his fighters. And he's just I tell people, people get mad because he is the first dude to shoot pistol red dots. Like, that's on record. That's not a thing. And it's not arguable. And people will try to get mad at his points. I'm like, man, that guy's a killer, man. He's 65. I still wouldn't want to fight him. He will hurt you in ways that'll change the way you live your life. I don't want to fight that dude. He is a killer. He's not worried about the windage and all this other nerd shit that a lot of people are worried about, man.
Yeah, there are times, man, where gear is too much of a focus. Yeah. But we love gear too, and that's why we do a gear and mindset show on a regular basis when it's just Aaron and I. But our focus on the gear is gear that really supports this path, and sometimes we'll nerd out a little bit. But to your point, most of that shit is not really necessary. Just learn how to run a good stock pistol. We like the optics now, of course, and of course all the other acumen that we preach on this show. Of course, the empty hands, of course, and fitness. But anyway, with that said, John, maybe we just kind of hit on at least the majority of the instructors as best we can, and kind of talk a little bit about what I experienced, and maybe you can hit on some points about what you saw. Some of these classes, of course, I was not in. So, and some of them I observed on the side. So we'll do our best. But so I'll just kick it off with yours. So essentially, John, you taught the fundamentals of clinch, right?
Yeah.
And the terminologies. And one of the things that I will say is that I've talked about this in the past. One of the ways that I expose individuals that have never seen underhooks and overhooks before is I use the method that you use, in that one person starts with double unders, the other person has underhooks. So of course that's the way you introduced, especially for folks that may have came there, and I'm sure there were some that hadn't been exposed to it. So you of course started off with that and showing basic pummeling drills. And one of the things that stuck out to me, I admit I don't know a whole lot about using the wall. And so you started us with some techniques of dealing with being against the wall and how to turn your opponent properly with said clinch.
Yep.
And yeah, so I wrote notes and like, why have I not been studying this a little bit more myself? And so, yeah, I've already been working that since I got home.
Awesome.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of that was just mainly to set all the students up and all the instructors up for success.
Yeah, it's like you said, because I was in Cole Miller's class. I like what you said. He's like, so if any of you go into Cole Miller's class and you don't know how to deal with the basics of the wall, then I forget, you said you're wrong or something like that. Which that was cool, and I can kind of skip real quick to the Coles because I mentioned it. Is of course a lot of folks out there in the audience probably know who Cole Miller is. He was a UFC fighter, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and of course one of his fortes in MMA was using the wall. So of course it's kind of cool. He's gotten into teaching combatives, and I also thought it was cool that a lot of what his impetus was training under Craig. So of course he was, any of the firearms stuff he did from that lens of as far as especially the thumb pectoral index number 2 firing position. But I mean, he had us go through using MMA wall work and in-fight weapons access. So it's basically because Craig came up to me and Craig Douglas, that is, asked me how it was going. And I said, man, this is great. I said, it's like in-fight weapons access mixed with MMA wall or fence work.
Yep.
So it was pretty cool. So that's one thing I'll mention. You're so busy organizing. You didn't get to be in a whole lot of the classes, did you?
No, I did I was doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, just making sure everything ran the way it was supposed to run, answering questions, shaking hands, kissing babies, the usual stuff.
And that was the right answer for you, buddy. I kind of felt bad at some point. I'm like, man, all this awesome. Of course you have an incredible background yourself, but I did feel bad at a few points. It's like, man, John's so busy keeping this organized and keeping everything running smooth that, you were missing out on some of the classes you might have liked to have been involved in. But yeah, the Cole Miller class was real cool. So did you happen to get to see some of Craig Douglas's weaponizing language class? I don't know because I thought I saw you come in there for a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I was in and out for all the classes. So I was trying to see, how the students were taking it in and taking in the information, how the instructors were presenting. So that weaponized language for tactical end states. I mean, some of it's familiar for ECQC or ShivWorks alumni, but Craig has been he's been working on some things to, I think he's made it public where he's working on a certification for folks to teach muck for managing unknown contacts. So part of that was so that way he can work out some of the bugs in that certification that he's going to start offering fairly soon. So I wanted to see what he was doing there, what was unique and different from his typical muck training. And yeah, and he always delivers. That's just,
Oh yeah.
Craig is he puts in the work, not just with the practice, but also on the presentation. So that way everything is, there's a proper build up. Everything's appropriate. The language is precise, and also that he also makes it concise in terms of telling you what you need to know and nothing more. So so that was really good. As also Chet's class, Chet was teaching the legal aspects of combatives and the law. So that was also very well done. Chet really surprised me at how good of an instructor he is. And I think part of that is, he's been doing that for about 15 years or so, as far as like talking about the law. So I think that's also where it is. So he kind of naturally falls into that dynamic. And also, like, he's tried a ton of cases. So he's used to standing in front of strangers and delivering information. And so he just was organically just a phenomenal instructor, a phenomenal presenter. And the way everything tried to lay out with the scheduling is that, okay, so there was two or three classes going on at once for the entire weekend. And the one class that everybody took and everybody started with was like, all right, this is the fundamentals of the clinch. You're going to know at least what double underhooks are. You're going to know what a one underhook is, an overhook, and you're also going to know how to pummel on the walls. So now you've got the baseline physical skills. Now, with the physical skills, you're going to go and take a brief on being able to articulate why you did what you did, because that's a really important part. That is the cornerstone of everything that it is we do. Okay. It's always entertaining to me when I see like instructors make these kind of like passive aggressive criticisms in terms of like combatives guys that we're just gun grappling, we're just shooting each other because we just enjoy doing that, and they don't realize like how much time we dedicate to de-escalation, how much time we dedicate towards deselection theory, understanding the law, articulating things for when authorities arrive. I think that, in fact, I think there's a good argument to make that people that are training that are taking a holistic approach to training know so much more about the importance of de-escalation and the legal aftermath and understanding legality and use of force. I think we do a exponentially better job in terms of, and I'm talking about at the practitioner level. I'm not talking about like instructors. Okay. I'm talking about the people who come and train. They're just exponentially better at articulating why they did what they did than any other person out there just doing pistol classes. It's believe it, accept it. It's true.
Yep.
So we made sure that everybody walked away. Like, not everyone got to do the weaponized language, but not everybody got to do combatives in the law, but everybody is walking away with an understanding of how to articulate what they did and in the importance of that.
Well, and John, again, you just brilliantly took some of the reins, because I wasn't in the combatives in the law, and
sounds like an amazing class.
And Chet, I've been following some of what he's been doing for a while, and it kind of seemed like maybe he's following some of what we're doing. So it was a pleasure meeting him. We're going to have him on real soon, but you made an important point, because Craig's class was a building upon muck. So anybody that's been through ECQC or even EWO, managing unknown contacts is the most important piece of those curriculums, and de-escalation being the most important tool for us in this walk and this path of self-preservation and defense. But you also connected the law, because, those two things, understanding what you can and cannot do legally is crucial to keeping you out of jail, and, Craig's weaponizing language was just a building and more nuanced version of muck, because for folks out there that's been through muck, yes, you have almost like 3 to 4 phrases that you push, like Craig talks about pushing play on a playlist. Well, that's the elementary version. You would probably agree. There's way more important nuance to, having proper verbal judo. So I won't belabor that too much, but yeah, excellent point about combining those two, because I wasn't in that class. So now you just described it really well. Aaron, what you got, buddy?
So thank you, bro. To me, putting that in context for someone that hasn't thought about combatives and the law, thinking that, maybe most people think that if they aren't using a lethal weapon that they're used to, a firearm or a knife, that they're not going to get hooked up on some lethal force or aggravated assault charge. So there's a point when combatives, you can drive into deadly force when you may not have needed to. I'm assuming that's what we're talking about, is when you're talking about combatives in the law, rolling over into that possible deadly force when deadly force was not appropriate. Am I right, guys?
Well, ultimately, you need real judo for vertical judo to work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's something that I think, and because we're working everything from a empty hands perspective first before we escalate to firearms, because, it's the smart thing to do to establish control if you're going to be in a fight, especially Craig talks about this a lot as far as being in a deficit, a reactionary deficit and disproportionate armament. So it's going to be in your interest to establish control. And in that process, in terms of making sure that you mitigate damage to yourself, you organically are able to explain why you did this thing, right? So that's the things that make sense. That is, as far as I think that the combative student is far more prepared, because for the person that's only doing firearms, their only tool for when things go kinetic is to go to lethal force, where we can establish control. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Well said, John. And, I think that kind of segues fairly well into hitting on a couple of really awesome classes that I took. And I'll just mention both of them real quick. And that was the knife control concepts from Aaron Giannetti. Finally got to meet him. I've been following him for, I think Aaron articulated the time frame about 3 years, because I learned about Aaron from Craig Douglas, and when he mentioned him. And so, number one, Aaron Giannetti's knife control concepts, and another person that I've been following and actually interacting online for 12 years, maybe, or more. Yeah, actually. So I joined TPI back in 2007, and Jerry Wetzel, a Red Zone Threat Management, was on there at that point. So I've been following Jerry for many, many years, and I would call Jerry one of the fathers of the modern knife defense paradigm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. He's been doing this. A lot of people don't know it, but he's been doing that stuff since like 2002, 2003, or at least that's when he released the material. the original Red Zone. I got to go check, but I want to say like around early 2000s. So Jerry's been exploring the concepts of an empty hands knife defense for well over 20 years.
Yeah, and his methodologies and instruction certainly showed, and I'm super pumped. He told me that he had refilmed his Red Zone videos, and that they're soon to release, and I'm super pumped about that. But yeah, that was a phenomenal class, and of course, shout out to our buddy Cato, which was the first time we actually met. That I actually met him, Cato Murakami, and he helped Jerry in that class, and it was phenomenal getting to learn from him as well. Just an incredible person too. And I'll just stop there and say this: I met so many people that I've been interfacing with online for many, many years. I mean, just the awesome networking from this event was so cool as well.
So I mean, we had 20 U.S. states represented, 2 continents and 3 countries. So first event, we're already global.
Yep. Oh yeah,
awesome.
It was global. Absolutely. Yeah, so cool, man. And then of course, Aaron's class, which Aaron has somewhat of a similar approach, wrestling based knife control. And one of the things that I'll like to say about Aaron's philosophy on how he teaches and how we were drilling is I love the way he emphasizes playing. And really that's simply a good word for a good mental cue for, hey, you're gonna give this concept time, and you're going to drill it with resistance, not necessarily full on resistance, and you're going to discover things. So I thought that was, and I had seen him talk about that many times before. And as a matter of fact, I think, I don't know if we talked about it then, but I know I had texted him before saying that I was going to borrow some of his concepts as best I could in my morning, the 0600, where I coach sometimes, not every single morning class, but I've definitely exposed folks to some of Aaron's concepts, and for that matter, Jerry's concepts that I kind of learned through the years, at least through osmosis or from some of my other mentors. So yeah, those 2 classes, knife control and dealing with, which is a very, very, it's a scary area, is dealing with a knife. Your thoughts on that alone? Just, folks that just think dealing with a knife is going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, every time we talk about dealing with
pull a gun, right? Go ahead, man.
Yeah, it's either just pull your gun or just run away, and it's like
bingo.
It's like, okay, cool. Like that's just. It's like, okay, have you ever tried that like in a controlled environment? And it's like, no. And it's like, okay, you're telling me to run. All right, what's your mile run time? I don't know. So it's like, all right, so like let's deal with the fact that fights happen in confined spaces. People like to isolate you, and they try to put you in places where they can grab you. Let's deal with things from that perspective, and let's try to come up with a solution. Like it's a. Or the other thing of like, if you get into a knife fight, you're going to get cut. It's like, it's a fight. You're going to take damage. It's like, because that's kind of the issue I have with that phrase, is like that they're implying that there's a way that you're going to get into a fight and not take damage. It's like, just accept that it's look, man, like there's fights that I've been in where I've totally won, totally dominated, and I still hurt myself by just being on the ground, bumping my knees on the concrete or the asphalt, whatever it is you want to do or call it. And it just like, you just take damage in fights, even if you're winning. That's just part of it. So as far as the whole dealing with a knife, it's just incredibly physical. Defending yourself with a knife is incredibly physical, and trying to control somebody trying to attack you with a knife is incredibly physical. It's a hard, it's laborious. So that's why I think the foundation for all this is strength. I think because if you're stronger, you have less of a problem controlling people. It's just what it is. It's like, Matt was saying it all throughout the summit. Like, who can beat Bruce Lee? A bigger, stronger version of Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I loved hearing that. That was awesome.
And yeah, man. That's pretty much it. It's a physical thing, and I think Aaron's approach to knife defense is great because he deals with it, and everything is a flow, and there's an interplay. There's a back and forth, and you're trying to, and you have some place where you're trying to go, where you're trying to get behind the person trying to attack you, and it's really hard to hurt somebody behind you. So I really like where he's going. I love how Jerry approaches it too, because I think Jerry's approach is, at least from what I've seen that weekend, at least from the presentation, Jerry kind of deals with more of a criminal assault paradigm kind of situation.
Yep.
Where the person is using a knife to intimidate you. So Jerry has some very interesting techniques from those positions. So yeah, it was all great. And it was like, you got to pressure test it. So, they're not bullshitting you as far as like, this is like my solution. It's like, I was talking to Kelly McCann today, and, we were just jabbering back and forth. And I was like, man, you gave me an idea. Cause he like, a lot of guys, they want to use the fact that they've been in combat, that's where you can trust this stuff. And it's like, okay, so like, what do you want from me? Do you want a raw Irish story, or do you want an honest experience? Right. And that's really where people are coming here for. They want a way. I think that's how people can come into this and not have that deep operational background. And it's not to say that it hurts. It definitely helps. But people can come into this with it without a deep operational background if they're truly putting in work, and they're putting in effort, and they're actually going through the things that matter and finding solutions that work, and also putting you in a position where you can test it out and have an experience for yourself. So it's like, you don't have to believe my word for it. You can trust your experience, right? So,
well, and that is a perfect point for me to bring up one individual that was there at the summit as a student, because you talked about operational, right?
Yeah.
You talked about where a lot of this comes into play, and I'll just mention one of the students that was in multiple classes with me, and that's Matt Pronka.
Yeah.
X-Ray Alpha, and for a lot of our audience members, we had been talking about his CQB warm-up carbine drill, because I had ran that a few times. And of course, a lot of our audience members are going to know who he is as well, being a Grandmaster in USPSA and a former unit guy. I mean, talk about operational. That dude's the legitimate operational dude. And he was there at the summit, mixing it up in classes. He was taking classes even in structural clearing that were not his methodologies, or maybe even not methodologies that he would use himself, but he still got in there and did it, being a consummate student. And, of course, it was really cool. I got to be, just essentially a fly on the wall when Craig Douglas and Matt were talking about structural clearing, and some of it was based around some of what Craig espouses in his AMIS course, his arm movement inside structures. And one of the coolest things that I recognize from Matt's thought process on things, and he said the words, because I was thinking it as well, but Matt said, you can't be dogmatic. You see, he said, you got to be agnostic about some of this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really cool. And I will say, on the air, it's really cool. We're actually going to have Matt. I've been conversing with him, and we're going to have him on the show, here. I think we solidified next week.
I believe so. Yeah.
But he's 25, 30 minutes from me.
Oh, no way.
And yeah. And I did not know that. I knew that he, had been in this area, but yeah, he still lives just, 25, 30 minutes from me. And I'm not a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm a purple belt. I have some decent knowledge and capabilities. But he expressed to me that he wanted to get further into jiu-jitsu, but it's hard for him to commit to going to a gym.
Yeah.
And the conversation kicked off, and he's like, "Hey, you help me with my jiu-jitsu, I'll help you with your shooting." So I'm
unfair.
I'd take that deal.
Yeah, I think I'm getting the better part of the deal. But the reality is, I know that I can help him with his jiu-jitsu and maybe plugging in some of the combatives piece too. But the more to the point is that I think that it'd be cool to help get him integrated in his own program, because he said he wanted to even just get better at gi jiu-jitsu. And coming from his perspective, he wants to get better. He said he wanted to compete. So I'm just going to try to hook him up in the community here that can maybe help him get better too. So, but yeah, that was one cool aspect of it. But Aaron, you got any thoughts on any discussion? I don't want to dominate the discussion, but
man, you're not dominating. I'm just, I knew this summit was awesome, but being able to hear you guys, just kind of recount it. And I think you guys, seeing the way you guys light up a little bit, you're kind of recounting stuff that maybe you haven't articulated much yet. And I'm just fascinated. The cool thing, just an aside here, the cool thing about this show is the learning that Eric and I get to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have, and I have barely any experience compared to Eric in combatives. But to that point, being able to witness you guys articulate the things you guys are about this summit, yeah, I'm having a good time. So you guys keep it rolling.
Well, Aaron, I'm so pumped about that you're, and I knew you would want to go next year as well, but there's not a damn thing, including a deployment, going to keep me from next year's summit. And what I mean by that is that I am part of the scheduling for anything I would do in my day job. So I will make sure that my calendar is clear. And Aaron, by the way, if Becky's coming, I'm gonna drag my wife down there, and maybe we stay down in that area or somewhere close.
It'll be a blast
for a few days after. We'll just make a vacation.
So speaking of, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on this, but John, do you think it'll be at the same venue next year?
We're just waiting on a confirmation from Ben, but yeah, unless something changes with Ben's schedule, yeah, it'll be. I'd like for it to stay in Florida. I think it's a great central location. I think that's why we had so many folks from overseas come, because of the international airport in Orlando. I think also, like you guys mentioned, bringing your wives out there. It's Central Florida. It's Orlando's right there, so there's plenty of shopping, plenty of things to do. I wanted it to, at least like in my mind, it just seems like an easier thing. Like this last summit, I brought my wife and my kids. We hit up Disney for a little bit. So yeah, I want it to be something where, and everybody saw my wife and my kids throughout the summit. So it's that for me, it to be a family experience where guys can bring their wives, the kids can hang out and everybody can train, and just, there's all the networking and fellowship and everything like that. But I think it's like when we get to know each other on that level of like, we've seen each other's families and all that, it's a good reminder for everybody of like why we're doing this stuff. Like it's not because it's like, oh, it's a cool hobby and we get to operate. It's like, no, it's like, I know the deep hole I'm going to be in if I'm ever attacked and I'm with my wife and my kids. So it's like for them to see us all doing this stuff, it makes it a normal thing for them to understand. It makes it easier for guys to like break away for a weekend, or for, you know, our sons to see like, hey, this is the stuff that men do when they need to protect their families. So I think, well, you know, I think of things in terms of that level. I don't think about it in terms of like trying to play a game. You know, I think this is a
It's
very,
not a game.
this is very, very real for me. The idea of protecting my family, that means a lot to me. I don't ever like to say these things of like, oh yeah, well, I'll die for my family. Well, look, I'm willing to sacrifice off time and go out there and get embarrassed and get beat up and
Yep.
do what I need to do, so that way you guys can be confident that if Daddy says he's going to be around, that's 100% true. Daddy's going to be around.
Amen, brother. Man, that is well said, man. Very well said, John. And it was wonderful to meet your wife and see your newborn baby. And man, just seeing your family there it delighted my heart, because, you know, Aaron and I, of course, Aaron has younger children than I. You know, I have one son. He's will be 24, but I'm a grandfather. You know, I have a grandson that's almost 4. So seeing a young family just warms, absolutely warms my heart. So it was so cool meeting your wife and your family. So yeah, I just sit there and think of how much fun I had, and man, it would be much better if, you know, if I had some of my family, my wife, or man, talk about a badass time, Aaron. You know the deal. If my son Nick could be there, because my son would eat this shit up big time. You know, of course he's in Japan right now. So what you got, Aaron?
Well, let's just put a fine point on that. Like what John talked about, the level of the way that people get closer through experiencing these events like this. They're difficult. They are, you're worn out at the end of the day. It's hard work, but at the same time, it's about as fun as things get, because the people that do this stuff, we've talked about this on the show. Craig Douglas talks about it, but at the same time, it is 100% true. You're rarely going to meet someone at an event like the Combatives Summit that is not cool as heck and completely well adjusted and humble. Yep. Yes, there's got to be some guys or gals in there that are just a little bit off, but 95% of them are some of the coolest people you will meet in your whole life. Yep. So anyone listening to this that is maybe thinking about taking some of these types of classes, you know, you may be thinking about coming to this next year. I'll implore you just to come because of the family that you're going to be a part of.
Very, very well said, Aaron. Yeah, I'm glad you're providing some input, man. Because
it goes back to my first DCQC, which I was so scared that I was going to quit the class at my first Evo. Now, man, I remember. I can't wait to go to my 4th one this spring. I believe Craig will be here near me. I'll be going, and I'll be taking my 14-year-old Graham and let him go through the agoge himself, as my other son did too. Yeah, it changed my life. That's not an exaggeration. All this stuff will change your life. So, yeah.
Well, and Graham already has a good foundation because he took our class in Tulsa.
Took our class. Jiu-jitsu background, and bro, he just shook the freaking house doing a clean while ago.
Sounds like you got,
what the heck?
And you probably need to build a platform if they're throwing weight, man.
Bro, I'm talking about. I felt. I mean, it was before we came on here, but I mean, we're talking about crash. And
Well,
I mean,
Aaron,
I really
are
think
they?
my table shook.
And Aaron, I can't remember because I know I helped you pick out your squat rack and everything, but I just don't remember. Did we pick out bumpers?
Oh yeah. We've
Okay,
got all bumper plates and
but but my point, Aaron, is if those boys are going to be throwing weight for the foundation of your house, man, I need to get you a platform plan. If they're fairly easy, just takes some wood and a few other tools and yeah, man, I'd be glad to help you make it too, man.
bro, I don't remember how. I'll have to ask him how much he was cleaning. He's wanting to reach this this goal that if you clean so much weight, you get this award at his school.
Oh,
And,
cool.
Yeah, and guys, I know bench isn't necessarily all that, but so John, he's 14. He is, I think, maybe right around 140 pounds. I spotted him on 225 the other night.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
That's really good.
Dude, he's moving some weight. Dude, both my boys are. I'm proud of both of them, and dude, they are dedicated. Dude, 6 times a week hitting weights. So
That's just like what John was saying, staying strong. And I'll just bring up now Nick Delgadillo's class
there you
of
go.
starting strength. Now, I was not in that class either, but John, maybe you can comment on Nick's class.
Yeah, so Nick is he's another guy that is like totally undersells himself because he's another like incredible instructor. He's been doing teaching strength. I don't even know how long. I think over 15 years he's been doing this, and he's Mark Ripeto's like right hand man, which is a big deal. Because if you guys ever met Mark, he's a very particular individual. So,
yeah, boy, I think that's Latin for something else,
right? So yeah, and Nick talked a lot about intentions as far as you have to be intentional if you want to be strong and if you want to be dangerous, and just all the things that the results that they have done with people. I wanted Nick to come and present because of he's just an interesting guy to me. He's a high level shooter, high level combatives guy, brown belt in jiu-jitsu with Rafael Lovato.
Yeah.
Knows about camera and media very well, and he's a strong motherfucker too. And he's a good dude, good family.
You beat me to it, man. He is a kind-hearted, good dude, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
let me just interject.
Go ahead,
Eric. I think we were hunting down some blue guns for a course we taught recently, right? And all of a sudden, he asked me for my address, and this box full of blue guns and certs and holsters shows up at my house.
Yep. All for our class in Tulsa we did last year, man. Phenomenal support.
Yeah,
that was awesome. So thanks again for that, Nick.
Yeah,
and I think go ahead.
Yeah, he just rocked it. He just rocked it. Had people deadlifting and training after the class. Like that's success as an instructor, right? When you get people to do the work after you're done, like that's success, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I was probably using the restroom like a lot of us older dudes running to the restroom at some point. And I saw his class being set up. It was badass. Yeah. Man, freaking barbells of plates all across the room, man. I mean, it had to have been 20 barbells with freaking plates on already ready to go, man.
And that like, sounds manly.
Yeah. We had a perfect location, to do all this with Ben, and like co-located with CrossFit Auburndale, and they were great too. They were like, "Hey, we got our last class 10 o'clock on Saturday. If you guys need to use our space, you're welcome to it. And so like, yeah, I mean, everything just worked out perfectly. Everything.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, man, Ben and Cindy's location, man, phenomenal, and it gives me the
Guys,
opportunity.
what is the name of that place again?
Redbeard Combatives.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, Ben's an incredible instructor. Of course, he was a presenter there, and I wasn't in his class, but my class got out a little early, and so I went in and hindsight being 2020, I should have just jumped in the class. I didn't feel comfortable at first because I wasn't in it, but I should have just jumped in, and I'm sure Ben would have let me in.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I just grabbed my notebook and I watched and I wrote a bunch of notes. And sometimes, of course, it may not be as effective, but it's got its own effectiveness, because you can't always write notes during the middle of a class as effective. But I was able to write very copious notes for his class, that the parts that I saw. But anyway, that kind of segues into the discussion of two of the classes that I took. And again, to the facility is some structure work. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the classes that I really, really enjoyed was Dave Boone Benton's class, which I think the original name was Weapons and CQB, or Weapons for CQB, but kind of a sub name to that was Dealing with an Active Shooter. Mm-hmm. And for audience members, I mentioned this the other day. Dave was a CIA GRS contractor in Benghazi when and by the way, I have to correct myself. For some reason, the other day I said it was 9/11, 2011. I completely misspoke. It was 2012.
Yeah.
When that incident took place, I just misspoke. I heard it the other day, listening to it for some editing, and so I correct myself. It was 2012, but where Ambassador Stevens and his temporary ambassador location was overrun. And then, of course, the annex, the CIA annex was also attacked and overrun. And that was that was absolutely planned. There's more to come on that. I'm going to be hitting on that a little more. And we're going to have Dave on the show too. And we're going to talk a lot about that. But bottom line is that that dude's a stud, and those other GRS operators went and man, they saved a bunch of people against 150 determined, trained Al-Qaeda. So, even not all of them were Al-Qaeda, but that was an Al-Qaeda, mission, or attack.
Yeah.
So with that said, the cool part, I'm going to admit, I've talked about this before too. I don't have expertise in clearing structures. That's not something that I have expertise in. Back when I was a soldier, and as much as Aaron and I have wanted to get into Craig Zama's class, we have not been able to. And a matter of fact, the one time we were signed up for it, I got a quick hey you, and deployed to Iraq. So I got pulled out. So didn't get to do that. But anyway, Dave's class, so what I loved about we would all agree, sitting in this in this podcast recording, that reductionist curriculum and the way that you structure your training is crucial. And Dave's class was reductionist, man. I loved it. I mean, it made clearing a structure seem so much more easier mentally. Now, granted, I want to say this right now before I go further. Clearing a structure, especially solo, is is something you don't want to do. Because, to use Craig's words, and heck, Dave even said it too, this is how to do it in the least. So I'll just use Craig's words. He said, I'm teaching you how to suck less.
Yeah.
Because, clearing a structure solo is a very, very daunting, dangerous, and possibly deadly, venture, because there's just so much that can go wrong. Your enemy has a vote. They can ambush you even in your own home. And it's just a very high risk. But again, Dave's class was phenomenal. And we went through and several runs of clearing that structure, to include at one point, we had to clear the structure and extract a loved one, quote unquote, loved one, out of the facility. It was awesome. Dug it big time. So, and he just seems to be a kind dude, kind of soft spoken, but definitely was a great class. And then Devin Crinklaw's class was also another reductionist type of way to clear structures. And that was one of the classes that Matt Pronka was in with me, and Devin's class focused on limited penetration and basically trying to minimize having to penetrate into a structure, and then when you had to, some reductionist methods of how to clear stuff. And, Devin's a good dude, a godly person. It was real neat. When some of the guys decided to do a small, I don't know, lack of a better term, a little bit of a Bible reading and prayer in the morning, I showed up early for that, and awesome. And Devin was in there. That was really cool. But shout out to Devin. We're also, like half these people that I met there that I hadn't met before or even trained with, we're going to be having on the show. Aaron, what you got, buddy?
Well, just kind of interjecting in the concept of reductionist. John brought it up literally at the very beginning of this show that you may not, I don't know exactly how you put it, John, but it was essentially that there's a set of skills that you may not need to be as in-depth as you think you need to be. But on the reductionist standpoint, ECQC, the class that you're talking about, clearing structures, reductionist, people sometimes, people often know in this community the OODA loop. Did I say that right? OODA loop. Colonel Boyd, that was actually reductionist because his concept was going through that loop and choosing one of 4 attacks or maneuvers in a fighter jet. So, going back to that, that's some more reductionist, but in a dogfight. So reductionist obviously is a reigning theme amongst things that and concepts that really work, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you got on that, John?
Yeah, because we'll just use kind of a fight analogy, right? Like I like to look at combatives as like warfare at the individual level. So like if you're fighting somebody and you do a technique, whatever it is, okay? Doesn't matter what it is. There's only a handful of things that they can do right and to counter it, and like a million things they can do wrong. And it doesn't even matter how many things they do wrong because they're wrong. So you basically fully commit to that initial attack, all right? You seize the initiative, right? And you're going into that attack thinking, all right, this could work, or I can expect this. And you're not really thinking about the counter, right? You're just kind of, there's a stimulus that occurs and you just kind of respond to that stimulus. It's like the same thing of like a hockey team, right? They're moving down the ice, they're passing the puck, watching for defenders, and they're just responding to things as they appear. Do you think any of those guys are thinking about skating? Right, like not a single one of them. Okay, they're just moving, and that's something that you can only achieve through prior training, and that's kind of where we see that our students kind of just do well because they have this exposure to a holistic approach as far as all the circumstances. I mean, like there's dozens of people who have said that, like, or thousands of people right now training for self-defense that have never been verbally assaulted, right? Like you get a student and you say something, you say a racial slur to them, and they because they've been embraced by their community, they've never even experienced that before. And it's like the shock of just having a verbal assault, just a psychological attack. There are thousands of people who train self-defense who've never experienced that.
Yeah, well said, John. So, John, real quick, I would be remiss because I was not in Cecil Birch's class, right? Because he's a very, very important friend, even though he's mad at Aaron and I right now, because we let Chris Lepre on 5 times as well as him. So he's a little upset at us.
And I just took a class from Chris 2 days ago.
Yeah, so cool, man.
So I think when I post that on socials that Cecil's going to be even more mad. Hopefully they'll let me take some classes from him again.
Well, Cecil, of course, Aaron and I have hosted Cecil for his immediate action combatives class. Phenomenal class. If anybody is interested in this realm, they must seek Cecil out. I was not in his class, but I saw segments, and no doubt it was a condensed version of some of what he does in his immediate action combatives, which is dealing with the grounded fight. So, do you have any comments about Cecil's class, buddy?
No, I mean I just like the way Cecil teaches. It's like he's got that. I prefer kind of like an old school jiu-jitsu, I guess it would call, and he's got that approach to old school jiu-jitsu, meaning like any body type, any athletic ability, like any level, or let's say you're not flexible at all. And he can teach anybody to just move and give them enough groundwork to where they can at least get to where they want to be, or at least keep themselves safe and mitigate damage. Like he's really focused on that. And you can tell, I mean, he's got his black belt from Megaton. So you can tell like a lot of those principles of where he's coming from are guiding his approach to weapons-based grappling and the entangled fight. So those are the things that kind of stuck out to me, and not just for Cecil, but like for all the instructors. Like you can kind of see, I don't want to call it bias, but it's like just the things that like you can tell, like kind of like what's their base and the base, how it kind of fits into the other side, right? So everybody's kind of got like a little small differences in what they like to do and how they like to approach it, like nuances, but still in principle. All the instructors all weekend, they like nobody really talked and deliberated. It just kind of worked out where in principle, everything overlapped over the previous instructor and the following instructor. So,
oh yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said, John. And so one of the other classes that I took, and of course, Aaron and I have taken Cliff Byerly's complete combatant class, phenomenal class.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like, because there's no live fire, there were some more nuances to very similar to ECQC, and of course, marking cartridges, the Evos with full opposition. Excellent course in Alabama earlier this year.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, excellent. And Cliff's just an awesome dude, man. He's become a really excellent friend as well as a coach. And the class that I took of his, number one, he had a vehicle extractions class that I did not get to attend myself, but I attended his vehicle combatives class. And if anybody's been through Craig's classes, ECQC, where they did some vehicle evos, then you would be kind of familiar with this. But man, getting to do some awesome, full oppositional, training was cool, as well. But a couple of the cues that I loved what he had actually taught in the class, and saying that, hey, get your head higher than your opponent, and use everything as handholds. And I talked about this the other night, but then we went at it with blue guns. And I'd like to say this about using blue guns versus sims or UTMs. Folks out there, if you have a group of people that are willing to train, and put yourself in these types of situations, do not discount blue guns.
No.
Or cert guns. It in all reality, the pain penalty, that's all important. The more realism of sims or UTM is absolutely valid. But goodness gracious, a blue gun or a cert gun is damn near as good. Your thoughts on that, John?
that like the marking cartridges, a lot of it, I look at that as like, that's hard sparring, right? Like full contact sparring.
Yep.
Like you can't do it all the time, but you should do it enough to where the lessons are guiding your training. So if you find out that, like, okay, I've been working this thing and I haven't extrapolated for the fact that, projectiles are a thing, then that's where it's like, okay, I need to go back and refine that technique that I've been working, or whatever strategy that I've been applying. Maybe that tactic is not worth investing any more time into at all because of what projectiles is. And even the marking cartridges, they're not perfect. You still have to extrapolate things of, like, for margin of error, right? Like if and for the folks listening at home, like what I mean by that, like if you lock your legs around somebody's head and then you blast them with the marking cartridges, you have to extrapolate for the fact that your legs are behind that person's head. Now, is that a great control? Sure. Yep. And for the jiu-jitsu guys, I'm talking about like a triangle. But it's like, are you willing to risk your knee in that margin of error? Is there a better way that you can do that will be less risky? Yeah, I would say yes. So yeah, marking cartridges, it's hard sparring. You do it in the course. It's a litmus test to ensure that what you're doing is the right thing. And then you go back and you refine the technique. You use things like your cert pistols and your blue guns and your inert trainers. But it's like you got to do, like, the thing about this work, that it's never just like one or the other. It's usually yes, right? It's not like this or that. The answer is usually yes. This is America. We surf and turf. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And well said. And I think that the main reason I brought that up is that some individuals think that, hey, I need to do force on force, but I can't get into these classes, like Craig or Cecil or Cliff's classes, or any one of our awesome mentors, that then they don't try, or at least put themselves in situations where they can do awesome training. And if you got folks that are willing, or you got people that have knowledge, and you got a set of blue guns and trainer knives, we can get after it.
I can double down on that when we took the class from the immediate combatives from Cecil, I'm going to mess it up. Sorry, guys. Becky came there, and I was thinking, man, I wish that, she could get some Sims work in or something. But Dude, the blue gun in his class was it. I just got to double down on it. It really is about as good. There were still evos, there was still pressure, there was still some validation of technique with the firearm. And then Eric, when we taught evos with certs, we could tell full well when the students were making hits, and it was just as intense, just as intense as the ECQC.
Yep.
I'm talking about the combatives aspect, and then people were amped up just like in a ECQC class, and they've just got cert guns.
Yep.
So it is valuable, and if you discount training just because they're only using blue guns or something, trainers like that, you got to rethink that, because it's excellent training. And again, that's coming from people that have experienced all this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Aaron. Well, John, I think we're starting to get close to the end of the show, but there's a few other individuals that I want to mention. Number one, Sam Ferguson of Gallo Combatives was so cool. And I'll just come out and say this right now, because Sam was a good example, is this capable, awesome, strong black belt in jiu-jitsu, awesome background in his own right, and was an instructor at of course the event. But how cool, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Eric, I love your guys' show. He said he listened to our show all the time, and he was introduced by Cato." I would count, I mean, half of the individuals that I had never met were listeners of our show, and it's very humbling, but more importantly, just very, very endearing to have individuals that like our show and get something out of it, and then to be able to meet them there in person, train with them, and all of us put our money where our mouth is, was just an awesome thing. So yeah, Sam Ferguson, I wasn't able to take his class, but I can't wait to train with him in the future. Future. Shout out to Sam out there. I don't. Did you get to observe any of Sam's?
Yeah, I got to watch it, and he was as advertised, right? Super high level guy. He had a very, he's medaled at no gi pretty much every belt that he's had,
yep.
Including black belt.
Yep.
And so when he was explaining things like the level of precision and insight, and also, like, I'll add to this, right? Like, the guy is a cop, and he's making dangerous arrests of felons on a weekly basis. So what's cool about
Lexington, Kentucky is no joke.
What's cool about all the guys and everything they're teaching is, like, a lot of it was developed out of necessity. So, like, we're not like throwing a product together and just hoping for the best, or just kind of regurgitating something we learned from somebody else. Like, we're all products of our products in a lot of ways, and like, this is what a lot of us have put together in terms of, like, our experience of trying to help others and help ourselves, and things that we've done in our professional or personal lives, and that's the material people are getting. It's not guesswork in a lot of ways.
Excellent. Well said. And what I'll start to close with, John, is that we also had an awesome friend of ours, Guy Schnitzler of Palisade Training Group. He did a class on small impact weapons like SAP and so on and so forth. I would have liked to have been in that class myself. I'm looking forward to picking up some training with Guy on that here in the future, because that's definitely one of his expertise. And Guy's just another very good dude.
We had
Yes.
just so many guys. I mean, so for folks who wondering, like, there was 18 instructors. So, and all of them, like all the leading, all the thought leaders since the 1980s up until and current current folks and future prospects like Aaron and Sam and Cole Miller. So it was just, I like, we could spend hours and hours talking about it. You know, like Kelly McCann's, I was like one of the highlight of my weekend, like getting to meet him and talk to him and listen to his presentation. That was awesome.
Yeah, and you know, we definitely have to mention Matt Larson, who, of course, has impacted you drastically. Man, some awesome lectures. Man, his motor learning discussion, and then, of course, what I really liked was his evolution of combat psychology. Man, just talking about comparing the animal mind, and we're animals, you know, comparing primates, comparing various animals in the way that animals' emotions are exactly like ours. You know, chimps or dogs or cats, you know, how their emotions are exactly like ours, you know, just on a different intellectual level. And, you know, effectively just bringing all that to closing in why we should be doing combatives for our mind development. You know, he hit on some of the impacts of doing combatives in aiding in PTSD, so on and so forth. But the bottom line of being that this community in combatives, and you talked on this too, buddy, is just being better people of character, better people of capabilities of being able to take care of our own and be better assets for this nation, man. So Matt's lectures were badass as well.
Yeah, Matt's legitimately one of my closest friends. You know, I learned, you know, I had a 2-year apprenticeship with him, you know. So, you know, and that was like after a year of just training with him. So it's yeah, I remember when he first started talking about that stuff, and it was like, it was very good back then. Like, he was kind of working it out. This is like back in, I don't know, like 2016. And he finally taught it for the first time in 2017. And it was still kind of a little bit rocky, right? Because he was still kind of just trying to find that area of like trying to appropriately explain the connection between how religions are evolved, and it was like, so it was kind of, it was hard for him to do. And then, you know, he's getting his doctorates now through Liberty University, and a lot of what they made him do was look at things through the lens of God. So he's really refined that material in a way that he doesn't dispel God with evolution. What he talks about is just like, yeah, God is a lot more powerful than our tiny brains can understand. So, and you know, of course, Matt would do that.
Well, and John, I'm so glad that, because of course that was a huge part of his lecture, and I did not do a good job of articulating that. Better yet is, you know, I'd like to reach out to Matt, and maybe you can hook us up, and because I would love to talk about that on this show, because
that'd be an amazing show.
It was phenomenal. And you know, last but not least, Fletch Fuller was also an instructor there, and I had not met Fletch before, and I honestly have followed him, but he was also a presenter there, and I heard lots of great things about his class as well. Well, listen, John, I think in all honesty, maybe we go ahead and close the show out, and what I'll say, Aaron, is, your closing thoughts, and we'll let John drop the mic.
Well, I just can't stress enough, going back to it, that you said it earlier, Eric, is this community is receiving of anyone that wants to join, because in the end, this is a community that is searching for truth, which is actually the definition of philosophy. And when you're searching for knowledge and not just validation of what you think you know, man, those kinds of people, you can't help but just frankly become amazing friends with, learn so much from them, and then it just feeds this continual need that I know the three of us have to continually learn. It's not just about fighting. It's not just about shooting. It's about, frankly, philosophy of life and being healthier, better adjusted people. So I'll tell you, I'm ready to get some of that next year. So, John, I can't wait to hear when it gets finalized, and I hope to have one of the first tickets bought.
Oh, I will too. And again, we had so many people to mention, so many notes here. I had mentioned him earlier, and we'll close, and then I'll hand the mic back to John. Is also Chris LeBlanc, Prevail one of the one of the coolest people I know. So impactful to me, mainly because out on, when I was in Washington State, I met Chris through TPI, and he was Kit on TPI, KIT. And of course, Chris is he is a thinker, and so, yeah, it was incredible to see him. I got to spend a good part of Sunday with Chris, and I wasn't in Chris's lecture, but to my understanding, John, he spoke about his shooting that he was in. Did you get to happen to listen to his lecture?
And it was just it was very intense. It's hard to capture it because it's almost like a unbelievable story, because he goes through there, and it was an ambush essentially, and he is just standing there,
Sure was,
and allowing this person to shoot him while he's also getting on his sights so that way he can take a precise shot. And
dang,
I don't know if I'm that kind of man, if I could do that, I honestly, hearing his story is just it's unbelievable to me. Not to say that he made it up. I mean, it's 100% true and verifiable on record. But again, it's these are the kind of people that we're helping, people that are going to be in situations like this, deep holes, and that's what we mean by a deficit. It's you are receiving damage, life-threatening damage. I mean, he seems great. I mean, he's, as far as his movement, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He trains,
yep,
thoughtful, but the type of damage people receive in the type of fights that we're preparing for are life-changing. They're life-altering.
Oh yeah.
And he really kept it together, and nobody died, including him. Just yeah,
Yep.
like it's just like you had to be there to hear it from his mouth.
Yeah, and I had Chris had spoke to me about his situation in person, his shooting, I should say, and I would have still have loved to have heard that lecture. And I will say, so Craig has only certified a handful of people. I mean, literally certified instructors. Chris LeBlanc is one of them. So. And I am humbled, and shout out to Chris. I know he listens to our show fairly often, but I was very humbled. That is, we're being hosted out there in Olympia by a really good friend of ours. Aaron David has a jiu-jitsu gym there, and I just happened to mention that we'd be there teaching, and Chris said, "Hey, let me know. I'll come up there and help you." And I'm like, man, I said, man, I'm going to have to turn it over to you. He's like, no, man, I'm there to support you. So yeah, that class is coming together probably in March or the first week of April. And yeah, it's
Awesome.
It's going to be good. So well, certainly, John, this again, like the summit, was epic and then some. So thank you for blessing us with your time, buddy. Really, really appreciate you. It was wonderful to meet you in person, get to converse with you, talk about all that we were going through at the summit. And man, you're a good person. And man, you become a brother. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. That's a very, very kind of you. And yeah, like I said in the beginning, I'm just happy everything worked out.
Well, can't wait till next time.
Amen.
Until then, guys, you have a blessed evening, guys. You take care.